Welcome back, everybody, to Recruitment Uncensored with me, Kate. Today is the last episode before Christmas, which I cannot believe because I've just come back from India, so I'm not in Christmas mode at all. But I am going to have a little break over the couple of weeks. So I wanted to end the year with a bang and get a guest on that would benefit you in terms of planning and preparing for 2024 because all of us in the industry want to make the best of the year to come. So I've got Bobby B on with me from Elevate Learning. Hiya, Bobby.
Hi, how you doing? It's almost like you got yourself an Indian takeaway after your couple of weeks away. You've got the Indian person in the room just to get
I've
over the
stuck with the
holiday blues.
theme. I've stuck with the theme. Just as a disclaimer to everybody, Bobby has had man flu, which I think we all know. I mean, I'm surprised he's on at the moment, but he's soldiered through and he's come on as a guest. So thank you for joining us today.
Hey, no worries. So yeah, apologies for any coughing and spluttering that might come across. I mean, hopefully the tea's helping me.
We will be fine. We'll be fine. Before I get started with the first question for Bobby, anyone watching, please use the comments. If you've got any questions at all, chuck them in there. I'll keep an eye on them because, we'll welcome anything you want some help with. I can give those questions to Bobby. I can cover them off as well. And we can make sure that we're getting any of those answered for you. So I'll keep an eye on that. But let's get going because I know we've got a lot to talk about with all these points today that's going to help all the viewers. So, first one, thinking about the year ahead, what candidate actions can people take to get ahead?
Oh God, there's a
Where do we
bunch of different
start?
things. Yeah, I was going to say, where do we start? I mean, first and foremost, number one, thanks for having me. Number two, as we are two rival trainers, do we need to have a death match at the end of this because there can only be one of us? But
Yeah, maybe we
more,
do. Or we'll have that
yeah,
in another episode, shall we? A full half hour.
let's have a Royal Rumble. But more importantly, candidate-wise, I mean, there's a fair few things that you can do. I mean, I guess do we start about with people in jobs, as in for the jobs that we're working, or do we want to start with people that we're just trying to qualify anyway? I guess if we're
Should we
talking
start
about
with that?
people,
Because that's the start, isn't it, really? Yeah.
yeah, so at the moment, between now and when you guys clock off for Christmas, have as many meaningful conversations with your candidates in your marketplace as possible. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to try and sell them a job. It's more a case of if you don't have a job at the moment, please tell them that you don't have a job because
Yeah, be honest.
the worst thing you can do is say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to have some jobs coming up." I mean, even something as simple as go on Indeed, have a look at a couple of jobs that are in the marketplace at the moment, and say, "Look, I'd love to have a conversation with these clients who are hiring about this type of role, but that's not going to happen until the New Year's. But I'd love to have some great conversations with amazing candidates like you to understand how things are going and get their viewpoints on things because." Everything that we're going to be talking about, and I know that Kate and I have spoken about this till the cows come home at team events and all this kind of stuff, is about relationship building. You can't do anything as a recruiter without that R word. And it's going to mean that you're going to have to get personal, you're going to have to get vulnerable, but you're going to have proper, meaningful conversations. Because,
And
funny
give your
enough,
time.
give your time, absolutely. Because if you look at some of the best LinkedIn content that there's been out there, some of the most successful stuff for me has been when I've been personable and vulnerable. And that
Yeah.
because that's how people can buy into who you are as a person. So forget the recruiter shtick, forget the KPIs to some extent. Have meaningful conversations, and then the stuff that hits your KPIs will come. And I know that sounds a
Yeah.
bit pretentious, but I know that's something that we both agree on. So even things like instead of saying who's your current manager, which is one of the most grating things that anyone can ever ask anyone because they know what's happening, right? They know that there's going to be a reference call. And I came from S3, so I know that we were the pioneers of I wouldn't be asking, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask. Well, but what's going on at your place? So everyone knows that that thing's going to happen. So if you can stop doing that and actually have a proper conversation to say, well, actually, who's going to corroborate all the great stuff that you've just told me from that candid conversation? Also, second thing is, what about asking about outputs? I get so sick and tired of people saying, I did IT, so I'll use IT language. Oh, they've got C sharp or Linux or ASP or all these tick box exercises of experience or skills. But what have they done
Yeah.
with them? things? How have they actually created those into meaningful projects? But more importantly, for your clients in the future, they want to know how those projects were brought in on time or ahead of schedule, or turned around a
They
failing
want the
project.
detail.
They want the details. They want the what challenges did you face and how did you overcome them? Because no one cares. I mean, no one cares about the skills. The skills are all the entry level to the game. It's about
And
what
it
you've done.
doesn't really make them stand out, does it? Because they're going to be up against a whole other sea of CVs that are doing the same thing. And I used to like asking things like, what have you really enjoyed about this position? What,
Yeah,
what's not, what's been, like you said, challenging, or what haven't you enjoyed? Because, okay, they're looking to leave, but I want to know what gets them going as well, like what they've really
exactly.
enjoyed, and things like a typical day. Because that's going to that's going to give you that real understanding of that candidate and where they're going to fit in the right place. And then it's easy for you to sell them if you know this stuff
Absolutely,
anyway, isn't it?
and that's perm or contract. I guess we could easily be classed as either perm or contract people in our worlds. And funnily enough, we can then, when we look to take on new clients, we look at would we enjoy working there? How could we impact the things that we could do? So if
Mm.
that's how we approach things ourselves, why couldn't recruiters think, well, actually, what would make someone want to move jobs? Let's forget the skills and the remuneration. I think McKinsey did a study, and it's about the top three things were, yes, remuneration and pay. It was one, but it was actually about long-term development and meaning of work. So actually, how cool is the work and what does it contribute to other things? So
Yeah.
if we could start thinking on those lines a little bit more and integrate those into our your candidate qualification forms or briefing questions that we ask, you're gonna get a lot more meaningful conversation out of your candidates. What about from your side? Have you seen any particular things that people have been doing either well or poorly that need to that they can start either keep doing or start doing or stop doing?
I think in the run up to Christmas, it can be really easy for some consultants to think, oh, well, it's coming up to Christmas and aren't going to be as bothered about looking and get a bit complacent, is what I mean, basically. And I think on the candidate side, you touched on it at the start, use this time to catch up with your talent pool as well. So, yeah, still be speaking to new candidates because you want to be
Yeah.
adding to the talent pool, but don't neglect the people you've already got, whether you're temp, contract, or perm, doesn't matter. Ring around everybody, have a catch up with them. What's changed, if anything? And just,
Oh,
what else have
that's
they
the
got
first
going on,
question you
if
have to ask
anything?
everyone. What has changed
What's
since we last spoke?
what's changed? And they might have changed things about what they're looking for, who knows? But you want to make sure, are they still looking? Have I still got everything up to date for them? And that adds to your relationship, because if you think about all your close friends, if you didn't speak to one of your mates for a month, they'd probably not be very happy with you. So if we're thinking about, it comes back to relationships that me and you keep talking about. You've got to keep up the relationship. Just because you had rapport in the first two calls, it will start to decline. So use
Yeah.
everyone's in a better mood at Christmas normally. So use it as a great time to have a nice catch up. Make sure you're on top of your existing candidates, as well as looking for new candidates, because you need to balance that time. So you're looking after your existing and you're trying to add that talent pool that's being really nourished. That's what
Look,
I
if,
what I think is
imagine
important to be doing now.
imagine you're working 2 or 3 jobs at the moment, and you're probably going to send 5 people, ideally to each of those 3 jobs. And funny enough, only one of those people is ever going to get a job from that thing. But you've probably spoken for each job that you work, you'll have probably spoken to 20, 25, 30 people who were maybe kind of right for the job but didn't quite have enough. So funny enough, you're out of 30 people that you may or may not speak to, only one might get a job. So that's
Mm.
3% people that you speak to and have qualified that actually get a job and go off the market through you. What are you doing with the other 97%? So the fact is, we are, for every 30 people that we speak to and one that we place, what's happening with the other 29? The other 29 are going for interviews with other companies, potentially through you, potentially through other people. They're also potentially looking at their options and for what can they do around now. I mean, Christmas is a time for reflection. It's a time for people thinking what has gone well this year, but also more importantly,
Mm,
what could change next year, which is why we generally tend to see, certainly in the tech markets, and I'm sure, Kate, with your background, you probably saw this in markets you've worked in, where January, April, and kind of August, September are some amazing times for people to think, you know what, I don't want to be part of this job anymore. I'm out.
New year, new me
New
is a
year,
nice
new me,
January
all
one,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. Oh God, I used to remember so many recruiters trying to say that about weight loss, not taking on alcohol anymore, and then funny enough, eighth of January, and it's like woohoo! Um,
Woo!
yeah, completely reverted. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, these are times where lots of people, and funny enough, lots of rec to recs are thinking the same thing. That lots of recruiters will tend to move in January because that's when people start to take stock of their lives. So have a think about that when it comes to these things, having these proper conversations, because people may or may not have, or may tell you now that they don't want to move. And then, funny enough, in 4 weeks' time, you're having a conversation with them in early to mid January, and they're like, actually, I've decided that I need more money because I've spoken to this many other people in my industry and I'm getting paid 5 grand less. I've just had a conversation with my manager about it, and there's no money in the pot, so I better look somewhere else. And so
Yeah, and
it's
you want to be
it's
forefront
have
of their minds. If you've kept in
totally
touch, oh, I need to speak to Bobby that caught up with me before Christmas because actually I do want to look now. So, if you've ignored them for the whole of December because you've been kicking your feet up because it's coming up to Christmas, somebody else could have stepped in there, you know? So,
absolutely. And it's about the content you make on LinkedIn. Sure, the personal branding stuff is there for likes and impressions, but actually, it's to let the people in your actual network know what you're going to do for them. It's kind of why we create content, I guess, Kate, isn't it?
right.
This is a
I
vehicle of
pimp
that to be
myself
able
out
to
on
engage with.
LinkedIn daily.
Yeah, right. Or more importantly, I use scheduling software on mine to be able to make sure that I'm consistently posting because let's be honest, most of my best ideas come on the toilet or going out for a walk or going out for a
I wish
well, not
mine
as much
did.
of a run or not as much of a run these days. But yeah, I get ideas about stuff, and or I'll see a GIF in a group, and that's where you can start really developing some of the content that then engages your audiences because you've got to think about how to engage with candidates in a multitude of different areas.
100%. And actually, that leads us on to our next question because what we've just talked about branding will probably come up again with this one. But let's go to
Clients,
the
yeah,
client side
absolutely.
now. Yeah, so let's go to the client side and what are some of the actions that people can take to give them that edge next year? Because BD is always challenging. Okay, that's the nature of our job. That's normal for it to be challenging. But I think we've both seen people have been struggling with it after the COVID rush. So let's think about,
Oh,
I think
totally.
people need to think about what's going to get them ahead next year, don't they?
Yeah, no, totally. So things you probably want to get out of your head or try and unlearn is the idea of pitching. So everyone,
I
I don't know
really
about
don't. I
you,
don't even like that word. I don't know what it is about
but I
it.
don't get it. Like at no point do I remember, and I've been sold to a bunch of times. I don't remember a pitch that someone made that made me think, oh, you know what? I need to buy that product or service. But weirdly, if someone told me to can you tell me what went on in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, I will probably be able to tell you about what happened during Harry Potter's first kind of steps out of Privet Drive, then being able to get onto the Hogwarts Express and go to Hogwarts and all that kind of stuff. And I'm vastly over egging this. But funny enough, we buy from stories. We buy from things that draw on our emotion and things that we can relate to. So forget necessarily pitching as your way forward. No one wants to hear I'm Bobby from Elevate Learning. What people want to know is actually I have solved this problem, and for one of your competitors, and I'd love to solve this for you. And funny enough, that R word is going to keep creeping in, that relationship word. It's one of those things that, again, what we're trying to do, and what I still see recruiters trying to do, and please excuse the metaphor for this, Kate. It's almost like we're trying to get laid off the first call.
Yeah.
when we BD. We're trying to sign up for the end product before actually understanding the person or the and we wouldn't do that in a dating concept. Maybe you would, and that's cool. If that's your thing, you go for it.
Well,
But but the thing is, the thing is, every time someone says yes to you,
mm,
you kind of think two things. Number one, how many other people have they said yes to? And number two, what is wrong with them that they've said yes straight away? Now, if
yeah.
if I, if I if I take that into the client terms, funny enough, if every time I rang up and someone said, "Yeah, I've got a job for you," I'm like, how many other people have they said this to? Which therefore
Mm,
means how many other times are we going to have this conversation about? I'm going to speak to all these candidates and say, "Yeah, I've had a conversation about that company already," which wastes my time. And more importantly, what is wrong with the job? And therefore, you can almost start to look at it and go, how can we create a plan of action around this job if that happens? But from a BD perspective, we've lost the art. Whenever it comes to creating a relationship, number one, it takes time. You're not going. Ideally, what you want to be doing now is having conversations, then maybe go on that first date. If I keep using that analogy, or maybe a
yeah.
second date or whatever that looks like, because that's what we
Stop
do in our
building it
personal
up.
lives. We don't go swiping right on Bumble, Hinge, and Tinder continuously and then just hope that a marriage comes out of nowhere. We're going, well, actually, we need to take those steps. And that's where speaking on the phone is one of many things you need to do. Funny enough, it's about your text engagement. Again, if I was going out dating, although my wife is probably online, like he never did any of this when
I was
we
gonna
were
say, I thought you
dating.
were married.
Yes, absolutely. But it's more a case of going, well, if to get there, I had to have text message conversations. We had to speak to each other on the phone. We then had to go on dates. We had to go on multiple dates before. I mean, I don't know when she lost her mind and decided that I was the right person for her. But then at some point, that level of commitment increases. And yet, what we're trying to do when it comes to business development is go, right, have you got any jobs? Which I don't
Oh, honestly,
understand.
I can't. I literally can't bear that approach. I can't. It is just the most. There's no effort or thought put into that at all. It's I need to tick a box. I
No,
need to
it's
make a
it's
BT call for my KPIs. Oh, I've done it. Great. Do you actually want to
now.
pick up any relationships or clients? Because that is
Well,
not
that's
going
the
to
thing.
work.
The thing is, you want the jobs that not everyone's going to get access to. It's a bit like you want this. You want a partner that doesn't give it out to everyone. It's exactly the same concept. So how can you get to understand who these people are? So the fact is, objections are your friend because at least they're thinking about, I'm not going to let any old person in.
You
So
tend
if
to
if you're
find out
getting
more from the
objections there,
objections then as well, don't you?
totally. And it's how you handle those objections. And I'm sure between us, we've probably got two, three different techniques to be able to handle any particular objection and go, well, actually, if I do handle this objection, because funny enough, I think looking at REC data around that, I think when I think 80 something percent of people are likely to buy after five objections are raised, but only 8%, sorry, 72%, but only 8% of people are on the phone after five objections are raised.
Mm,
So your top 8% of recruiters are cherry picking 72% of clients because they're willing to answer those objections that people are facing.
yeah.
So you've got to be prepared to put in some work and just expecting things to come quickly. Look, I appreciate how our relationships have changed with things like the phone, and we were talking about this off air around actually if I don't know the number, it's probably going to go straight to my voicemail. And if they leave me a voicemail, maybe I might go back to them. But if I'm a geriatric millennial, because unfortunately for me, I turned 40 in 4 days, and for me, my attitude with the phone has changed because I was pretty much everything was phone calls, but now it's
Yeah.
all WhatsApp, it's text message, it's voice notes. So why aren't we using the same multi strategy approach rather than just thinking we need to get on the phone? We need to work with our marketing teams if we've got them to be able to create a really good strategy around sales.
100%. And actually, before I bring up the next question, because we're going into job actions then, so it might not come up again. One thing
Yeah.
that I think is a great question in client calls is if you're asking them about challenges, ask them how that's made them feel. what effect has that had on you? Because you mentioned emotions, right? They're really powerful. People, if you take that person back to that moment when that agency let them down or that candidate was awful and they weren't qualified properly, they will be back in that moment, stressed, frustrated, upset, and you want them to relive that because then they're like, yeah, do you know what? I need to change. But let's go on to the next question.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
Job
Which I'm
action.
sure they'll link quite nicely anyway.
Yeah.
Job actions,
What
right.
should people put into action?
Number one, grade your jobs. Put a put
Yes.
a you know put a list together. If you're fortunate enough to have a few jobs at the moment, write them all down. So I do this with all of my consultants. Put them all down. Talk about each and every job, and talk about things like how likely are they to fill this. And I go through a grading form around this. Things like, is the job easy to get to? Is the salary in line with what they're asking for? Are they asking for some weird technology or skills that you might not have ever seen before? Is the process enough to keep people interested in the and a bunch of them? There's about 10 that I could reel off. Look at all of those and look at your attitude, your ability to fill them, and go, right, actually, this job is number 6 on my list. And what I used to do when I felt more confident as a recruiter is I used to speak to the company where the job was number 6 on my list and say to them, look, I could fill your job, but at the moment I've got 5 others that are more important to me because of this, and this. How can we change that so that you feel like your job is going to get done first? And I know that sounds quite ballsy and utopian or whatever you want to call it, but for me that was then saying, look, I've got a finite amount of time each month. If you want me to if you want me to work on your job as part of that finite time, can you tell me how we can work together to make sure that's placeable? Because recruitment is a team sport. It's not about you working as an island. You and the client need to work together on
Mm.
trying to find these things. Also, I guess especially at this time of year, very, very quickly, when are you going on holiday? I put a post about this week. When are you going on holiday, and who is taking over any kind of recruitment stuff? Because funny enough, childcare commitments come in, and a lot of your clients will have to think about schools quitting for Christmas and therefore having an
Yeah.
impact on their working time. So they're not going to be as available in some cases. So the worst things that people can do is try and book interviews before Christmas, because some people aren't going to be in the office then. So understanding when people are in the office is one of those things. I mean, going back to a
Yeah.
client point that you mentioned, it's about understanding pain points. It's about understanding what things could stop things from happening. You know, for example, I don't know about you, but I've had a few recruitment clients say, actually, we're holding off things till the new year because we're just waiting to see what our budgets look like and that kind of thing. It's like, cool. If that's happening in your own companies, have a think about how that might affect some of the companies that you're working alongside. Well,
Be understanding of it as well.
this also probably ties in a little bit with the candidate stuff. As you said earlier, Kate, what has changed since we last spoke is one of the most powerful questions that you can ask anyone, whether it's a candidate, client, friend, partner, whatever. Because funny
Yeah.
enough, things crop up. Whether it's I don't know what happened. I don't know whether you used to suffer from this, but I used to have to tell my candidates when they were interviewed to take life insurance out for them and everyone they knew, because weirdly, someone would have an accident or someone would have to rush to hospital, or I had
Family
a candidate.
emergency. If
Well,
I had
I
a
had a
penny
candidate.
for every time I heard that, I would be a billionaire right now.
I had a candidate whose mum died 4 times.
Wow.
I know, impressive. I thought that was really impressive. And look, I'm all for liberal families, but 4 mothers, that's really pushing it.
They wouldn't have
Um,
got past. How did you get to four?
because I didn't realize that one of my colleagues had called them about another job previously, about 6 months
Um,
prior, and so he'd used that excuse once. Then he'd used it about a year before that as well.
they don't think we
And
talk, do they, internally?
no, and then I made the mistake of looking at it and going, actually, why? Oh, this guy might change. We all think that
Yeah.
everyone's going to change, and they never do. And so think about those little things that could stop. When I was a better recruiter, I wouldn't say I was an amazing recruiter. My average was around 300 grand for the year. That was my kind of thing at 10 grand a placement. But the one thing I got to was thinking, what could stop something from going ahead? Having that paranoia and almost preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. And if
Mm,
people can get into that mindset as quickly as they can and take the emotion away, because what made me really poor when it came to filling jobs was thinking what that meant for my commission and what that meant for like my debt that I was in when I was a recruiter. And you're thinking about those things as opposed to the objective thing about making sure that the company and the candidate are properly aligned and committed to each other. How about from your side? Are
yeah.
there any particular things that you're seeing that people need to do or
I th-
not do?
the grading 100%, but I think don't just grade it once and leave it. You need to keep reevaluating it. So,
Totally.
okay, now I've covered that job, or I've got two CVs over for that job. That's a bit more covered off. So let's take that down the priority list. And this one then goes up. So I think that's important. And I think in terms of job actions, is not I think sometimes people will pick up a job and they're like, right, I've picked a job up now. And this kind of ties in with client actions. My BD work is done. This is now my life. And it's like, no, 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 no. Yes, you need to source for it, but still you need to go out and kind of think about what else, what other jobs you need to like try and bring on. So I'm just
Oh
gonna,
God, yeah. Just
before we come
because
to
you
your,
pick, yeah, I was gonna say
go on.
just because you bring on a job doesn't mean business development goes out the window. If anything, that's the most important time to do more business development. Because I don't know about UK, but like again, at my busiest, I probably had about 7 to 10 jobs in a month. And I couldn't be, I'm not gonna lie, I got bored resourcing jobs all day, every day. So I don't know why you'd want to. So for me, I'd break it up with something different just to keep the mind occupied.
Yeah, just for
And so
some
for me, that was
variety.
business development. Yeah, totally. Like I was only at that point when I then went, oh, actually, I've got these candidates that are for this job with a financial tech, not a fintech client. What other fintech companies in and around Cambridge might be interested in this candidate? And then that becomes an exciting, and lots of businesses talk about jobs with multiple interview and candidates with multiple interviews. So imagine being able to create a list of people, three or four opportunities for the same people at four different clients in and around the area. How much, pardon me, how much easier is it to create the right kind of recruitment experience and hopefully therefore create multiple placements for the people that you're working with?
No, totally agree. Now I know you've got a really good top tip to share. Before we get to that, just going to give
Yeah.
everyone a run through of when the next episodes will be. Because I said we've got a bit of, I'm going to have a bit of a Christmas holiday.
How
So
dare you?
my next, yeah, I know. Oh, I can't wait. Even though I've just come back from being away, but I was working, so that wasn't a holiday. Next episode is the 10th of January, same time, 12:30 p.m. Now, my guest is Mr. Recruiter Fit, Alan Clark. Can't wait to have him on with me. We are going to talk about something we've kind of covered off a little bit today, or maybe it was actually before we went live. I can't remember. But how to handle client objections. Might have been when we were off air, actually. We spoke about it, didn't
Yeah, we were
we?
talking a tiny bit about it now, but yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
So this leads on really nicely from what we've covered today. So if you are somebody that finds it difficult to handle client objections, definitely come along on the 10th. 12:30 p.m. I will add the normal people to the group, but the event will go live about a week before. So keep an eye out for that. So let's come to your top tips. I want to make sure we've got a bit of time to cover this off before we finish.
Yeah, totally.
Understand who your target market are. Talk to me about this one, Bobby, because I know this is very
Yeah.
important.
So I know, and my colleague Shane and I, who I think is on listening, we were talking about this just before we came on air around identifying the ideal client personality or profile or ICP or avatar or persona. There's
Yeah.
lots of weird and wonderful terms for it. But looking at your candidates and your clients and going, who are these people? Now, we talked about this in a previous section that people in different generations are responding to different things. And so, if you are heavily in that kind of Gen X kind of bracket, if your clients are those Gen X people, how did they respond to things? And actually, it's not about how you got to fit to their world as opposed to the other way around. Same with millennials. You know, you've got to look at the different generations. And so Gen X are predominantly phone led, instant feedback, you know, want to be able to kind of receive action. Whereas millennials, the general consensus is a lot more tech savvy, but prefer feedback, you know, kind of laced with good and bad, and want to be able to, you know, be approached in different ways. Gen Z, on the other hand, are very much direct, want to be told what they can do to get from here to here as quickly as possible. They love short form video, as we all do, because funny enough, we use our phones. Even if you think about how we use things like Instagram as an app, we used to use it just to put the odd photo down. Then we used to put it to put lots of photos down. And now we're using it predominantly for video, and how we're consuming short form video via Reels, or certainly because I'm old, I don't have a TikTok account, but those that do have a TikTok account, you know, use those a little bit more. So think about your ideal personas and where are they hanging out socially? What are they doing to be, you know, what's their mindset thinking? How can I appeal to these people in the right way? Rather than it just being about, hi, I'm going to enforce my point of view on you, and I'm hoping it's the same point of view
Yeah.
that you have. Is get to understand people's points of view, get to understand how, you know, if you hire, you know, for recruitment business owners on this call, if you've hired a load of, you know, 20 something people, what of their strengths are you using to be able to create the content, or to be able to create the business development activity that you want, rather than letting them pigeonhole themselves into what we think should happen. How can we
Yeah.
get the, you know, we're paying people to be creative, or certainly a creative generation, to then just sit behind a desk and hopefully just send some messaging out. What's, you know, how does that work? How can we use the strengths of the people that we've got to identify the right people? Also, sometimes, just to add on to that, think of the right media that is being used. So if you're working in a market that's healthcare, or maybe even kind of maintenance engineering or something like that. Think about, where do these people hang out socially? Do they have LinkedIn profiles? Some do, lots don't. There's more to candidate acquisition than than just LinkedIn. It could be Facebook groups, it could be TikTok, it could be Instagram Reels, it could be Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. It could be Reddit. You know, there's lots of different ways to approach these people if you're willing to choose, you know, willing to put some effort in to find the right way.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Could not agree with you more. Thank you so much for coming on with me today. And for everybody watching, Bobby is tagged in the event for this. So if there's anything else that you'd like to, I mean, any questions, anything at all, you can connect with him that way, or you can check it in the comments on this, and I'll tag him in anything that he's not tagged in as well. Thank you so much for coming on with me, Bobby. It's been
No
really
worries.
to get you on, because I know we've got a very similar opinions on things, and it's been music to my ears to speak to somebody that values relationships. So thank you so much for coming on. Have
What
an
do you mean?
amazing
That's
Christmas,
just a female
everybody.
only trait.
Oh, don't get me started on that, honestly. We'll be here all day. Don't get me started. But look, everyone, have an amazing Christmas, an amazing New Year. We'll be back on the 10th of January. And like I said, connect with Bobby. Any questions, fire them his way. And I will see you in the new year.
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers, guys.